Welcome back everyone, Zara here again. This week's episode is all about designing in the wild. Most would think that designing in the wild would be an interesting and creative experience. But unfortunately it is a collection of extremes. Those extremes involve a scale of temperaments, possibly even dysfunctions. Understanding the design temperaments won't necessarily fix any design issues, but it helps the designer understand why some make the choices they do. And to the interior designers watching this video, first, you're welcome. Second, Style Drops feels that someone had to open this dialogue. So let's get to this deep dive on Gail's POV on designing in the wild. Everyone has their own design living preferences. Everyone knows what they like and don't like. That's normal. That's not what we're talking about here today. We're talking about lifestyle blindness, the inability to visualize how individual elements come together to create a functional, cohesive space. These observations are not intended to belittle. This is design therapy from a distance while observing design clients and shoppers in the wild. Though it's fact, not an opinion, that some people who cannot visualize chess moves or think in pictures is referred to as aphantasia. It's very easy for some to see what they like and don't like when it's sitting on a showroom floor. But it is difficult for some to express what they want, or how to correct a specific design issue within their space. These are very different skills. Many find something they like, bring it home, and it just falls flat. They don't know how to have their space come alive and tell a story. When one states, "I don't like that," or "that will never work," these are pretty definitive statements. But not liking something doesn't automatically mean you know what will work instead. That's why designers are needed. Designers are there to help realign a space, to help guide the client's desires, because design is subjective. It feels like it should be simple taste, such as, "I like that chair, let me take it home and place it in the corner." Or, "I like that vase, let me place it on the mantle." Everyone has taste. Some range on the scale of good to great, while others might be more, "What the heck am I doing?" Even though the majority feel that they're qualified to make the right design decisions. But design isn't just taste. Design is problem solving with spatial constraints, traffic flow, lighting, proportions, scale, that you're not consciously tracking but the designer is. Your taste matters. Your preferences matter. Your needs absolutely matter. But designers are there to help push you out of the box. This is proven by hearing phrases like, "I would never have thought of that," from a client when a project is complete. But when the client pushes back and insistence that the designer's directions won't work, that is based on nothing, just inability to be open. Or possibility, a repulsion to a specific color or color in general. Not that the overall design is not working. A good designer wants to collaborate with their clients. They welcome questions. They want you to push back when something genuinely doesn't fit your needs or lifestyle. The goal is to design a space around the client's desires and how they will actually use the space. And yes, many designers will design towards their own preferred living style. But that is where the client needs to make sure their voice is being heard, by directing the designer to include their desired look and feel. So let's break down some of Gail's fundamental design dysfunctions that can make a designer's lives even harder. First up is the functionalist or the utilitarian temperament. They have a core belief that if it doesn't serve a clear, even measurable purpose, then it shouldn't exist in their home. The functionalist may not be allergic to beauty for beauty's sake. They just want everything to have a job. Decorative objects make them anxious. Throw pillows are considered a nuisance. Art on walls is fine, as long as it's also covering an electrical panel, or there is something small and innocuous. They live in spaces that function perfectly and tend to feel a little void of interest. Everything is practical, efficient, and completely devoid of personality. Their home says, "A person exists here," but offers no information about who that person actually is. The functionalist doesn't understand why anyone would pay extra for something that just looks nice. They bought their furniture based on load-bearing capacity and warranty length. They chose their paint color by pointing at the middle sample on the strip and saying, "That one's fine." So how does one spot them in the wild? When they found a great priced sofa on sale, even though it will block their passageway in their home. And they will still choose a cream-colored sofa while owning 4 dogs. Because, remember, it was on sale, and it looked good in the store. Their motto and preferred color is, as long as it is on sale or free, it will go with anything. They insist on layouts that make rooms less functional, not more. When you point this out, they say, "I'll make it work," with absolutely no plan for how. They think interior designers are frivolous. They own exactly one throw blanket and it lives on the sofa, and is fought over on who gets to use it, the dog, or you. The challenge? Getting them to admit that beauty has value, that aesthetics affect mood and well-being, and that living in a space that feels good is not the same as living in a space that merely functions. Next up is the boundary challenger, and their core belief is, I hired you, therefore you work for me 24/7, and all your ideas are just suggestions that I may or may not ignore, especially if I include another designer in this role-playing. The boundary challenger doesn't understand that paying for a service doesn't mean owning a person. They text at 11 p.m. with quick questions that require hours of work to answer. They ask for one small change 17 times. They say, I trust your judgment, and then challenge every single decision you make. They have no concept of scope, timeline, or reasonable expectations, especially for delivery dates. They think everything should be faster, cheaper, and exactly how they imagined it, despite never clearly communicating what they imagined. The boundary challenger is exhausting. They create emergencies out of normal situations. They treat your professional boundaries like mild suggestions. They act shocked when you invoice them for the additional work they requested, as if unlimited revisions were implied in the original contract they didn't read. How to spot them in the wild. They use phrases like, can you just do this one thing, and since you're already started? And another favorite, I know this is last minute, but everything was needed yesterday, and you're wasting their time by even standing there and listening. You should have found it already. They've gone through multiple designers before you, and it was always the designer's fault. The challenge. Teaching them that boundaries exist for a reason, that your time has value, and that one more thing is never actually just one thing. Let's move on to the design defiant, and their needing to challenge design selections as though we are now negotiating a peace treaties between countries. Their core belief is, this really isn't what I want, it looks like you just guessed wrong, without me giving you any proper insight to my preferred opinion whether that would be the best choice or not. Resistance is their preferred fabric and color choice, across the board. The design defiant doesn't just make bad choices. They commit to their own choices with the conviction of someone defending a doctoral thesis. You show them why something won't work, they understand. But their way will still be the only correct way. The design dysfunctional is frustrating, because they asked for help and then rejected the solution in favor of the exact problem you were hired to fix. How to spot them in the wild. They say, I know my house better than anyone, and I know how I want it to look, right before making a choice that proves they absolutely do not. They ignore spatial reality. They treat professional recommendations like interesting opinions they're free to disregard. The challenge. You can't fix someone else's dysfunction. You can only document that you warned them and move on. This next design temperament is Gail's favorite, the Sigma shopper, and their belief is, I don't need anyone's approval for my space. I know what works for me. The Sigma shopper decorates for herself, not for validation. She doesn't care if her choices are trendy, Pinterest approved, or what her mother-in-law thinks. She trusts her own judgment and isn't waiting for permission to make decisions. This sounds ideal, and often it is. The Sigma shopper creates spaces that genuinely reflect who they are. They're not paralyzed by options because they know what they like. The potential downside. Sometimes they're so committed to not seeking any outside insight that they reject any good advice just because it came from someone else. Independence can tip into stubbornness. How to spot them in the wild. They make decisions quickly and confidently. They don't need to crowdsource opinions. They're comfortable with spaces that are unconventional or polarizing. They genuinely don't care what other people think, which is both their strength and occasionally their limitation. The challenge. None, usually. This is the client designer's dream about clear preferences, confident decisions, trust in the process. Just don't mistake their independence for difficulty. And for our last design temperament is the aspirational buyer, or better known as Philistines in the wild. Their core belief is, I'm buying furniture for who I'm going to become or think looks perfect on TikTok or Insta, not who I currently am. The aspirational buyer shops for future self, the version of themselves who hosts dinner parties, works out daily, and reads physical books in a dedicated reading nook. Prefers everything in cream, because no one really lives in her aspirational space. Current self eats standing over the sink and hasn't entertained in 3 years. But future self is very sophisticated and definitely needs that Insta prefect vibe. This temperament leads to homes full of furniture for lives people aren't actually living. Formal living rooms no one sits in. Home gyms used for storage. Beautiful cookbooks displayed on counters by people who order takeout 5 nights a week. How to spot them. They describe how they want to use a space, not how they currently do. They buy furniture for activities they've never done. They're always planning to start hosting/reading/exercising, just not yet. The challenge. getting them to design for their actual life instead of their aspirational one. Furniture doesn't change behavior, it just takes up space. The paralyzed overthinker core belief. If I research enough, I'll find the perfect choice. Until then, I'll research more. The paralyzed overthinker is drowning in options and cannot make a decision. They've been looking at paint swatches for 4 months. They have 73 browser tabs open, all about different sofas. They're waiting for certainty that will never come. They want the perfect choice, which doesn't exist, so they choose nothing. They'd rather live with a broken situation than commit to a solution that might not be ideal. How to spot them? They ask endless questions. They want to see just a few more options. They cannot commit to anything without intense anxiety. They've been almost ready to decide for 6 months. The challenge? Teaching them that good enough is better than perfect, and choosing something is better than choosing nothing indefinitely. Understanding your temperament changes nothing, but also everything. Knowing your design temperament won't magically fix your decor issues. The functionalist will still struggle to value beauty. The value has nothing to do with it. Everything is about the story and feeling your space creates. The boundary challenger will still text at inappropriate hours. The overthinker will still overthink. But maybe understanding why you do what you do makes it slightly easier to work with yourself instead of against yourself. Or maybe you'll just recognize yourself in one of these, feel personally attacked, and continue exactly as before. Either way, now you know. So, until next, my stylistas, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe.